Hi, this is Eric Joy Denise, and I want to tell you about something that I have called the Joy Project. So let me give a little backstory. We'll start with, I should let you know that this is some upsetting stuff that relates to some childhood trauma and uh, some abusive parenting practices and so forth. So just a heads up. I grew up, I was born in '85 and I grew up in, late '80s, '90s. And Polaroids were still around through a big part of my childhood. This is some folks who are younger probably don't know what a Polaroid is. This isn't an actual Polaroid. It would be much firmer material. I don't actually know what it is, but this is a real Polaroid. It's much firmer. You can hear that snap. So anyway, in my family photo albums that are still at my parents' house, they live about 2 hours north of me. There are pictures of me, and here's one. So this is one that served as a before, if you're familiar with the before and after photos. So I am turning 13 this year, in 1998. So I'm still 12 at the time. This was my first diet. One of my parents took the photo. And you can see here, this is my height. I was at the time 5'8". I've always been tall. And now I'm 6'1". At the time I weighed 190 pounds, and then you can see my pant size, and I guess that's my t-shirt size. And you just, look at the attempt at the sad face, the sunken sort of shoulders and so forth. I never got around to an after photo. I don't think I lost any weight. I didn't do anything to lose weight, but this was a common topic of discussion is, in my household growing up, well, not so much we, but my mother more than anybody else would point out, you should lose weight, you've gained weight. Oh, she gained weight. And it's like, wow, you've said that every time I've talked to you about her. She must be like 1,000 pounds by now. Just this hyper attention to that. And some real disordered eating behaviors and, just a lot of that. So this is me at 12 already on my first diet. And that's pretty early. It's probably no surprise that now in adulthood at 38, I have binge eating disorder, and I was in a partial hospitalization program for eating disorders after a suicide attempt, from being in a really, really bad place with my weight. I've gained a lot of weight, even still in my adulthood, from anxiety medications. It's sort of this like awful catch-22 that the very medications that I need to help with my mental illness also cause me to gain weight, and that weight gain causes more distress. And I'll talk more about the other mental health stuff. Here's another one. And so this is my handwriting again. I've written lazy, and this is just me in my childhood home. I'm relaxing in a lazy boy chair. No, the irony there, with my foot up. And then I wasn't eating at the time, but this one says greedy. Just my mouth is wide open, and let me not turn the camera. I hate when people do that. The sentiment here, I mean, these have become core beliefs for me, and so now in adulthood I struggle with, as I've already said, an eating disorder and perfectionism. I mean, I've admitted to people like, oh, I feel so lazy, like I feel like I'm not producing enough, and I mean, they get offended because I am constantly working. I have a very complicated relationship with rest and celebrating successes and so forth. So what I wanted to do, I realized in this, unfortunately, the most recent mental health intervention which finally I think got to the root of some of these issues, was getting at these core beliefs. It's hard to feel like you are a person of worth when you have these, your starting point, the lens through which you view yourself and your relationships with other people is through the words lazy and greedy, and that you are hyper aware of your weight. Yeah, so I realized it was time to fight my demons head on, and it turned out that the demons were my parents and my family in general. Um, and I now have to do the work of sort of parenting myself and healing and challenging these beliefs and replacing them with other things. So what I wanted to do, and by the way, these photos are still sitting in my parents' photo album. And when I actually asked them about it, and I said, "What did you all have any thoughts about this?" And they said, "Well, you wrote that." So, and that was the end of the conversation. Is that my teenage self had already adopted these labels that were being used by my parents about me. I never got to be in anything that actually was interesting to me. I always was put in some sort of sport, hyper masculine crap. Tiger Cubs, Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, softball, t-ball, baseball, wrestling, bowling, even football, junior ROTC, basketball camp, voice lessons, because my voice was always a bit higher. Just so much emphasis on weight loss and being a boy, because my mom's fear was that I would, quote unquote, turn out to be gay, and that proved to be true. And then worse, in her words, also non-binary. So I need to redefine myself for myself. Self-definition is a very central part of my worldview, and that's drawing from Black feminist scholarship, that self-definition, and a lot of work around healing, in Black feminist and womanist spaces. So that's really important to me. So, fight fire with fire. I decided to do the Joy Project, and joy has here a secondary meaning. I legally changed my name as part of my way of two things: severing ties with my family of origin. So I dropped the name Grollman, which it turns out, Groll actually, it is a place, so it's man of Groll. It's a people from this specific place, but also it means malice and resentment. That is an awful name. It's an awful name. It's also just Grollman. Grollman, anyway. Whatever. So I legally changed my name to Eric Joy Denise. I was wavering between justice and joy, and I decided on joy because joy will always be healing. Of course, I'm forever committed to social justice work, but I wanted to make it a priority for me because it's like a core part of who I am, because imperfection and being unworthy, all of this stuff is such a core part of how I think of myself, and I need to center joy. And it's not just me. Obviously, there's conversations around celebrating Black joy instead of all this talk of Black death and Black bodies and the harms of white supremacy, and trans joy. I'm seeing some colleagues who are emphasizing that again there's this conversation necessarily around the violence, the political violence, the actual physical violence, the violence of the prison industrial complex, discrimination in the workplace, and so forth. We also need to talk about joy if we're going to talk about Black and trans and other minoritized folks in a whole way, and I have to do that for me too. So what I did is ordered Polaroids to be printed of pictures that I already had from this company called Squared that I've forgotten where it's based, but I did not realize it's not a company in the US. And so my first order of, I don't know, like 200 pictures that I had turned into Polaroids got caught in Prague somewhere. And so they actually sent a duplicate order, and I ended up getting both. So now I have two of so many pictures. And my selection here, you can see the back here. It's pretty much just a print. I mean, this is, you could probably do this yourself, to be honest, but, they save time, and maybe it came out a little better than if I had done it. So I ended up choosing photos where I saw joy in myself, as a kid, as an adult, by myself, with friends, mentors, colleagues, and so forth. So I got a lot of pictures. What I just look for is, did I look joyful in that moment? And I picked, different, they let you pick different colors for the frames. And I tried to get cute and do some coordination. Like you can see here, Semi's top has this sort of gold color, and then I ended up picking a similar color frame, and then here, the red shirt with the red frame and so forth. So there they are, and I got myself an album. And again, to counter those negative labels, I ended up writing whatever kind of thought or feeling came up, using they're metallic paint pens. They're pretty cool. I think they're just an option. I don't know that there probably are others that could do the same thing, but I went through all of these photos and just put whatever was sort of coming up for me. And obviously you'll start to see a theme, like joy, radiance, joyful. So I ended up taking the time to actually put them into themes, because I wanted to see what would come up. Look at, am I not adorable? Am I not adorable? And am I not adorable there? So I got to pull out, sort of this positive memory, this positive connection to my childhood, but also my adult self, and taking out critical thoughts, and particularly, I would say particularly for periods or moments where I otherwise sort of remember it through a negative lens, or, I learned to not appreciate, something that's unique or positive. So here's what I've done. If you remember, that was labeled greedy. Excuse my nails. That's really bothering me. I usually keep them short. See, and I'm being self-conscious. Anyway, whatever. So this used to be greedy. What I actually was doing here was playing around with the Polaroid camera. And I was taking a selfie before selfies were a digital thing. And now, and I'm trying to hold back emotions. Now, in seeing this through really just a descriptive lens just describing what I was doing in that moment, is a form of self-compassion. But more importantly, I am telling a different story here. I have a whole PhD, and I was a tenured professor. So, and I published, I don't know how many articles, I'm a pretty smart person. Um, and it didn't really click for me that I enjoy photography. Um, I have always enjoyed photography. I don't know why I'm saying it so weird. Um, but I think being detached from that was not an interest that was ever encouraged for me. Any sort of artistic thing, and that actually was another sort of revelation for me. Was I said to my husband a few months ago, I think I'm an artist, and he just looked around the room, and there were 10 of my own paintings up in the room, just in that one room that we were in. So, I've had to do, I'm having to redefine my own life story. I'm retelling the story through an empowering, compassionate lens. And something that I hadn't expected, okay, more emotions. Something I hadn't expected was realizing, I went out thinking it was going to be a bunch of photos of when I felt good. And you can see there's friends, dear friends throughout. Um, so and I actually had to do a second, I had to do a second, I had to start a second one because there were so many. I mean, look at this community, feeling welcome somewhere where I feel I belong. Um, yeah, like I can't talk about joy without talking about community, without talking about love. Um, and that was a surprising thing as well, but it makes sense. I mean, we're social creatures. But I needed to know. I needed to know that I that I can call a space home, and I can call spaces safe, and I can call friends chosen family. I can. I mean, something that's really hard about sort of grieving the end of a relationship with toxic people who are still alive. I'm grieving people who are not dead. I'm grieving people who terrify me. If I think back now through a sort of compassionate lens, the kind of terrifying situations that I was in when I was not protected. But that's not the full reality. There have been people along the way who are safe, who do love me, who do protect me, and that is obviously such an important foundation for joy. So, and there's I actually bought a retro style camera with the Polaroid film. So I want this to be an ongoing project, but it is obviously one that I have to keep practicing. I have to unlearn habits that prioritize things that do not consider or actively work against joy. Um, yeah, joy is literally my middle name now. So I got some work to do, but it is so well worth it. Thanks for listening.